desserts. I'm so happy to join you again this week in my kitchen. Now, I am a huge fan of rhubarb. I could just go on and on how often I love to bake with it and eat it and all that jazz. And today I'm going to be making a very special recipe for you. But first let me tell you where it's from. In Detroit, Michigan, there's a wonderful, charming place called Sister Pie. I have never been, but I really would like to go, obviously one of these days. It is run by Lisa Ludwinski, who published a book of Sister Pie's recipes, not too long ago, a couple of years ago, I think. And I own this book, and I cannot recommend it enough. They have amazing pie recipes in here, including, I believe there is a rhubarb rosemary pie in here that I made once, which was just delicious and kind of a twist on the traditional rhubarb pie. Today, however, you may be surprised that I am not going to make a rhubarb pie. I am actually going to make a unique recipe out of this book called Rhubarb Blondies, a bar cookie, a traditional blondie, which is filled with lots of ruby red rhubarb pieces and also some toasted almonds and creamy white chocolate chips. It's just fantastic. I think you're gonna love it, and it's also super easy to make and whip up in no time at all. So without further ado, let's get to it. All right, we're gonna start right away with our rhubarb. I have it in a little bowl here. Now I am using frozen rhubarb. I have plenty of fresh that is growing in my backyard right now, but I still had a lot left over from last summer. And rhubarb freezes exceptionally well, but a really good thing to know is that as your rhubarb freezes, it does accumulate a little bit more liquid. So as it defrosts, it's going to be quite runny. When you defrost your rhubarb for this recipe, if you are using frozen, make sure that you pour off that excess, I like to call it rhubarb water. Save that maybe for a cocktail or another use, or just discard it. Now I'm going to add a couple teaspoons of sugar to sweeten that tart rhubarb. Just stir that together and set it aside. I have my butter already melted in this bowl here. And into this melted butter, I am going to add dark brown sugar and light brown sugar. Whisk this together. I think the key to these blondies being so good is, in fact, those two different kinds of brown sugar. You could definitely use all of dark brown, or you could use all of the light brown, but I do feel that there is something really extra special about using both of them. The dark brown sugar just has a little bit more of a molassesy flavor to it, which I love particularly. And I think that when you're using all brown sugar and blondies like these, it makes them more butterscotchy, which is what you really want to go for in this recipe. To this mixture, I'm going to add my eggs. And these are both room temperature. Always crack them in a separate bowl. Just whisk those in a little bit. Once I add eggs to any mixture like this, whether it's blondies or brownies, I'm a little careful with using my whisk. I don't really want to whip too much air into this mixture. I want it to stay fairly chewy and dense. And then I'm going to add my vanilla extract. Vanilla is a very important ingredient in blondies. You really want that nice, rich vanilla flavor. Make sure that you use pure vanilla extract, not imitation. Just doesn't quite pass for a recipe like this. I'm gonna switch from my whisk to a spatula and scrape down the sides. Make sure I'm getting all of this folded in. Pretty easy so far, right? And now I'm going to add my flour. And also some kosher salt. Recipes always need salt. If there was anything my Grandma Newfang taught me, it was that even if a recipe does not say to add salt, you should add a little bit. We gotta have that little punch of flavor in there, otherwise recipes can be somewhat bland. No fun. How easy is that? My mixture is nice and satiny smooth. Sometimes I do find that dark brown sugar tends to lump up a little bit. That's okay. You might just have some little nuggets of yummy caramelized sugar in there. If you really want to, you can really try to beat those down with your spatula as best as you can. But I wouldn't overmix this too much. To this mixture now, I'm going to add some white chocolate chips. I like white chocolate. I know that it's a bit of a controversial ingredient, but I like the smooth creaminess of it. It's not technically chocolate, it's technically cocoa butter or cocoa fat. There's really no chocolate to it. I like it, and it's really, really good in this recipe. What else is good are these toasted slivered almonds. To toast your almonds, just spread them out on a cookie sheet and then put them in the oven at 350. I would start with about 8 minutes and just kind of keep an eye on them. When you start to smell them getting nice and toasty to your liking, then you can take them out and immediately put them on another sheet pan or in another bowl so they don't keep toasting. I think these took me about 10 minutes. I like my almonds a little on the toasty side. And what is beautiful in these blondies is that these add a nice little bit of crunch. So there's some really nice textural contrasts in these rhubarb blondies. And finally, you are going to add your rhubarb. The recipe says to add the rhubarb all at once. I actually add maybe about 2/3 of it, and I hold back some that I'm going to sprinkle on the top. I have my 8x8 inch pan, which I have lined with parchment paper completely. I'm just going to empty my mixture into my pan, like so. Take my offset spatula, kind of smooth it out here in the pan. Make sure it gets into all the corners. Looks good, huh? And now I'm going to take the rest of this rhubarb and sprinkle it just across the top so that you see that beautiful ruby, those little ruby red nuggets all across the top. They will sink in a little bit as the blondies bake. That's okay. I just would rather see a little peek on top so we know what's in these. I'm also using this particular rhubarb that I had from my garden last summer because this late harvest rhubarb that I had just seems much more red. And in these blondies, I love that really bright pop of red color. And for a final touch, I'm gonna take some sanding sugar and sprinkle this over the top. This is another little extra bit of crunch to the top of these, and it really looks nice and sparkly when these are all finished. You can be pretty liberal with this. There is, of course, a set amount in the recipe, but I just really go by eye. I like a lot of this crunchy sugar topping. Additionally, you could also spread a little regular granular sugar on top too. So it looks like this. So good, right? So now I'm going to put this entire pan in a 350 oven and bake it for 25 to 30 minutes until it tests done and the blondies are set. While my blondies are baking, I want to chat with you a little bit further about blondies as a rule. I will admit that I've never had the best luck with blondies. A lot of the times mine come out very dense, underbaked, the top is very baked, and they're always rather tricky no matter which recipe I use. I have found that recipes like America's Test Kitchens work exceptionally well, and these rhubarb blondies always come out really well too. I always find that blondie recipes that begin with a melted butter mixture come out the best. So if you too have problems with making blondies that come out completely baked, nice and dense and chewy, but not underdone, no matter how long you bake them, I would highly suggest you seek out recipes that start with either browned butter or a melted butter mixture. I also should mention that while I toasted the almonds in these blondies, that is a totally optional step. The original recipe does say to just add the sliced blanched almonds as they are, but I like to toast mine because they add a little bit more of that nutty, toasty flavor. Okay, my blondies are out of the oven. I've let them cool a little bit on a wire rack, but now I am going to remove them using the parchment as handles. Kind of slip them out of the pan like so, slide them over, and then just gonna fold down these sides. Doesn't that look so good? You really want to make sure that they cool completely. They will hold their shape better, and trust me, they're gonna taste so much better if you just let them cool completely. So don't cut into them too fast. All right, check it out. We have our Rhubarb Blondies from Sister Pie here. They're absolutely fantastic. They're just a perfect alternate use for rhubarb. They're nice and buttery and butterscotchy, and they have that nice little fruity tang from the rhubarb, the crunch from the toasted almonds, and then the creaminess from the white chocolate. I mean, what more could you ask for, right? I provided a link below to Lisa Ludwinski's book, The Sister Pie Cookbook, and I also ask that if you like my baking videos, please subscribe to me here on YouTube on the Newfangled Desserts channel, and follow me on Instagram and Facebook. So until next time, happy baking!